and welcome to geekoutdoors.com and on this continuing series on moving from Windows 10 or Mac to Linux. I want to ask you a question about a situation that you're probably familiar with. So you're going to shut down your computer, and then all of a sudden you get a message that says Windows is updating, and you have to wait another 30 to 40 minutes before the upload finishes. And if you decide to shut your computer off while it's doing that, you could have problems, or the whole update process could start all over again. Or how about something even just recent? You're getting constant reminders to upgrade to Windows 10 even when you told them that you do not want to upgrade. Does that sound familiar? Yes, if you are a Windows user, you are probably used to this. Mac users don't have to deal with this as much as it does with Windows. However, that leads me to no more Windows 10 updates or Windows updates, period, because now in the whole new world of Linux, specifically Linux Mint, things are a lot different, a lot less annoying, actually not annoying at all, and you could actually use your computer. So before I begin, I do want to say that if you have not seen these episodes on how you can install Linux Mint on your virtual machine, which I also show you how to use, I'm going to leave the description below and also a card up here on how to do that. So if you've not seen that video, be sure to go watch it first, and then you could come back to this video. So if you've already done that, you should know that you should start up your virtual machine and go ahead and start up your Linux Mint, and that's what I already did. And we're going to go ahead and jump right into this virtual machine. And so what I want to talk about in this specific episode are a few things. The first thing being is how Linux Mint, or Linux in general, how it manages system updates. Okay, so these are the ones that you are familiar with in Windows and Mac. But in Linux, it works a little differently, and it is so much easier and less annoying and painful than it is in any other of the main operating system that I just talked about. And the other thing I'm going to go into is the system settings in Linux Mint, and also some other settings that you might not be familiar with, because the people that I'm talking to now, they have never used Linux before, and they've never used Linux Mint. Okay, so the first thing we want to talk about is the big one: system updates. Now, as anybody knows in Windows, and I'm specifically talking to Windows users and Windows 10 users, you really do not have control over the updates that you get. You can always turn off those updates in your settings, but Microsoft still has the final say. So that's why even though when you select no updates, you still get updates. And unless you want to spend a lot of time learning the different codes that Microsoft has for each one of their patches and updates, you will probably not have any idea what's being updated onto your system, or really any control, even if you are super geek. Because unless you want to spend time trying to block updates, which most people try to do, you're never ever going to be able to stop all the updates, because at the end of the day, Microsoft has backdoor access and they have all the keys. Now, Linux Mint, how it works is, if once you log in, on the bottom right, you see this little shield looking thing. This is actually your update manager. Okay, and how it works in Linux Mint is, whenever there is an update, you will see this little blue signal, okay, or color, and you do not have to update. Okay, it's not like other systems where they force you to. Okay, now when you bring it up, you'll notice that it tells you what updates are available, and it also tells you what level they are. Okay, and just to give you some information, the levels are priorities, and let me show you that real quick. So what you would have to do is you go up here to edit, and then to preferences. Okay, and here you don't have to change this, but this is what I want to talk about: levels right here. So level 1, those are the best updates you should get. These have been thoroughly tested. These are official, so these are the ones that you should definitely update when you feel like it. These are the ones that are usually like your security updates, your OS version updates. So these are really important ones, and they have been thoroughly tested. So I would always have this checked so that you make sure that you get the most critical updates. Okay. The second one is recommended updates. These have been tested and approved by Linux Mint, and I also recommend that you keep those checked as well, or X mark right here. Now the one that this is checked, but I think that you do not need is this level 3. So all you'd have to do is uncheck it. So that means that Linux Mint will not look for these updates, and then you click on apply. Okay. And now it will no longer show any levels of updates except for levels 1 and 2. And it'll update here in a second. Now, whenever you do update, it's as simple as you just clicking on install updates, and Linux Mint will do the rest, and that's it. There are no annoying pop-ups. There are no constant reminders to update to the most recent version. None of those things. Even when there are critical security updates, there's none of that neither. So in the one case, Linux Mint gets out of your way so that you can use your system. But in another case, it does teach you a lot more about you learning about the system, meaning you are going to have a lot more freedom, but you're also going to have a lot more responsibility on when you should update or when you should not. Some people, they just don't feel like updating their systems at all, and that's their choice, which is great. It's your choice. Now, if you see this thing up here where it says local mirror, all that means is whenever it updates, it's going to look for the closest servers, Linux Mint update servers in your area. So you could always check that, and depending on which country you're at, it'll look for the closest server. So that means your updates will come down a lot faster. And in a nutshell, that is it for the Linux Mint. And for most Linux distributions, this is how the updates works. It's very, very simple. And the Linux Mint updates are so good nowadays. I've rarely ever had any problems whenever it updates. In Windows, sometimes when you updates, it could cause problems, or in some cases, it might even break something else because the newer version of the software is incompatible with something else. In Linux Mint, for the majority of the times, I would say about 99%, I've rarely had any problems after it updates. But I do recommend that you only choose level 1 and level 2, okay, because you want to keep this system as stable as possible. And if you're updating to like things that haven't been thoroughly tested or experimental, there are chances that could cause problems. Okay, so very easy. No more annoying updates, and this will never try to update while you're trying to shut down your computer or randomly pop up on your screen. That is not how Linux works. That is definitely not how Linux Mint works. So this is all under your control. So let's go to the system settings. Okay, so you're going to go down here on your menu and just go right here to system settings. Okay, now there are going to be a lot of system settings available, but I'm going to go through the ones that I think that are important, and you could go ahead and go around and play with them. And a lot of these should be familiar to you if you are a Windows or a Mac user, but in Linux Mint, it's very, very simple. Now, I did talk about backgrounds, themes, and fonts in a previous episode, the one that I was talking about earlier. There's also such things as effects, and so those are like special effects with your Windows and so forth. So when you have time, you could go look through that. Now, some of the things that I want to talk about are the features that I think are important for you to know about, and that also probably help your usability of the system. The first being date and time. And so this is exactly as it sounds, and I know this might not be too complex, but here you could change the actual time, the way it's displayed. Right here it's in military time, the 24-hour clock. You could also turn that off, and now you actually have it in the the standard time that you're used to seeing. Okay, so we're going to change that there. And then here, these things right here, these are applets, and applets are basically these little things down here. Okay, so you could add and remove applets to the bottom, and I'll show you another way to do that as well. Okay, and then as you go down further, there is preferred applications, meaning the main applications, you could set a default application. Okay, there's another way to do that here too, but this is probably the easiest way for people who are new. And then the same thing for when you insert media and when your camera's installed and so forth. Okay. And then your privacy, this just tells it whether or not it stores any of your recently accessed files information. Okay, you could have that off as well. And there's your standard screensaver. Now there's another thing here called workspaces. That allows you to use multiple windows or workspaces. Okay, and I might show you that real quick once I go through the settings. And as you go down further, here's your display settings. Okay, so if you have multiple monitors, multiple resolutions, it's kind of self-explanatory. And you could also adjust the color settings for calibration as well if you're that type of person. And on your power management here, this allows you to tell it when to hibernate and when to suspend, and so forth, and how it will also act when you have it plugged in or not plugged in. So very simple right there. And if you have a printer, you just click on here. And in Linux Mint, a lot of your drivers for your devices and so forth, Linux will find it automatically, which is nice. Linux has a lot of drivers built in because Linux works on so many different devices. So there are literally thousands and thousands of drivers available. So that's real nice. For the most part, I haven't had any real issues at all with my hardware. It just works right out of the box, which is nice. And which leads me to the device manager. So here, this will actually look for any of drivers that you might need for your particular hardware, and the majority of times the hardware is available in terms of driver support, which is real nice. Now for some things like graphics card, like NVIDIA graphics cards or ATI, you're gonna have to work a little bit there, meaning you're probably gonna have to go to the website and download the drivers if it's something not available in Linux Mint or in the Ubuntu they call it repositories where they store everything. But the majority of times they'll have a compatible driver to work with your hardware. Okay, now like I said, the only times where you might run into an issue with this is usually with graphics card, and then sometimes with network cards you might have an issue there too. But for the majority of times, things just work right out of the box, and then whenever you plug in your printer, it will find something that is compatible with it as well. So if it does find any type of proprietary drivers, it'll tell you right here, and it'll give you a list of drivers that would work with it. So I'm not going to wait on that because I'm not using any proprietary drivers. So I'm going to wait on that one. And also here in your login window, whenever you log into your machine where it asks for your password, in Linux Mint, you are able to choose the way that looks, like a different theme. So that's nice. And with Linux, you could do so many things with the way your system looks. You could make it look and function exactly like you like it. So if you're willing to spend the time, there is a lot of flexibility when it comes to that. Now, the users and groups, this is where you could manage all your users. Okay, so right now we only have one user, and the user is an administrator. But if you're going to be sharing this computer, or if you want to keep it secure, you could always create other users. So if you click on it, it'll give you details of this user. You could even change the role that they have. And so, for example, if you added a new user, you don't want a lot of admin users. Okay, so let's just call this Tess, and then the username is Tess, and then you choose the account type. So in this case, I just want it to be standard, and after that it's going to ask you for a password. So easy peasy right there. And the rest of the settings, you could go through them. They're very self-explanatory. About the only place where people are going to be like kind of unfamiliar is the themes and the effects, because Linux allows you so much control. You could pretty much make this look like a Windows 10 machine or a Mac if you wanted to, and if you wanted to spend the time. And the one last thing I wanted to talk about here is this panel down here. Okay, this is your panel. If you right click on your mouse you can actually modify this. So if you press that, now you can edit your panel, okay? And you could add applets to it, like I just showed you a little bit earlier. This is just easier to do it through here. So you could add little shortcuts down here, see, of all the applets available. You could also download some more applets to increase your functionality, okay? And you have to have an internet connection to do all this, by the way, if you wanted to download additional things. And then you could also change like where your how your panel acts, you know, whether or not you want this to auto hide, whether or not you wanted to move it to the top. So you could do many things here, but like I said, it's really self-explanatory, okay? And there are a lot of other settings that are, you know, it could get really in depth. However, for the majority of people, all you have to really think about when it comes to the settings, or especially updates, is your system updates that are down here, which you have complete control over, and also your system settings, which you also have control over. So that is pretty much it for this particular episode and on this continuing series. No more Windows 10 or Windows updates. No more annoying pop-ups for you to do things, and you have complete control over your system. So that's one of the many benefits, and to me, that's one of the biggest benefits of having Linux Mint or Linux in general, is that I have control over the operating system that I've installed on my computer. Thanks for checking out this episode. And as always, if you like these videos, be sure to click on the subscribe button. And for full written content, audio content, and additional geek stuff, head over to geekoutdoors.com. And I'll see you outdoors on the very next episode.